Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. This is Yu Tsai, and today my guest is fellow Asian American who has been inspiring so many of us out there with a single poster graphic that have made Asian for Black Lives Matters movement so strong and so prevalent and amplifying the voice that we need to have for the community for Black Lives Matter. And my guest today is Kalaya'an Mendoza. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Yu Tsai. I really appreciate it.
Where are you right now?
Right now, I am on the ancestral Confederated lands of the Lenape people, otherwise known as New York City, specifically Jackson Heights, Queens.
Amazing. Before I'll talk, I've done some research on you and I read up about you that protesting is part of your DNA from the moment that you found your voice. Let's let our audience know a little bit about your journey. How did this Asian American man find his voice in this land of protest?
Yeah, just like a lot of queer Asian Americans growing up in the States, there was, I grew up with like a lot of empathy and would always be angry around injustice. When I was about 14 years old in high school in East Side San Jose, we used to have the San Jose PD do sweeps of Filipinx, Vietnamese folks, and Latinx folks on campus with alleged ties to gangs. I was one of the folks that was picked up in a sweep and basically interrogated by our vice principal. After that, I started organizing with the Filipino Youth Coalition and other groups to get the police off of our campuses. And we did an action at the Board of Supervisors meeting. And I remember a couple of the Board of Supervisors, when I went up there, I was shaking, trying to read my statement. And I was really just really trying to change their minds. And I noticed a couple of them had started to fall asleep. And I said, you know what? F this. So I got the podium and I hit it and started chanting, "What do we want?" And a roar behind me came, "Justice! When do we want it? Now!" And you better believe those two Board of Supervisors woke up. Since then, I have done a lot of my own kind of studying, but also practice around nonviolent direct action. I joined the Tibetan freedom movement in the late 90s and got trained around being a street medic and doing background solidarity support in the lead up to the 1999 WTO protests in Seattle. And since then, I have been doing trainings, actions all over the world. In 2008, I was part of a group of about 76 Free Tibet activists that went into Beijing, and myself and two other non-Tibetans wanted to do an action where we raised the Tibetan flag about a kilometer away from the Bird's Nest Stadium. We were within 30 seconds, there were hundreds of police and military around us. We took out the flags and we were beaten. I had my head slammed into the concrete, so did my other comrade, and I had my foot broken 2 places. 2 Chinese military took me down, and I was kind of proud of being, it took 2 soldiers to take me down with my nonviolent protest. But after that, we were interrogated, waterboarded, put in stress positions for, it was about 24 hours until we were deported from Beijing and never allowed to come back.
You are actually on the list that you're not allowed to go back to China.
Yeah, they got all of our passports and did something with our visas, and we're all on the list. And I later found out that we were also part of a WikiLeaks communique from Beijing to the State Department that sent our names. So we wanted to show the world that if this is what the Chinese government does to non-Tibetans while all the world is watching, what do they do to Tibetans, to Uyghurs, to Chinese dissidents, to other folks that are fighting for their basic fundamental human rights behind closed doors? And really, sorry.
with that movement, obviously from that moment, that the escalated situation and the hardship that you have to go through, how do you sustain this calmness and continue to want to have your voice heard, not just in the Tibetan movement, but you moved on to Filipino American awareness and Asian American awareness, and now we are in the midst of Black Lives Matter movements. It seems like this is part of your DNA, that you continue to pivot where it's necessary for the voice that needs to be heard. This is a special skill set, and we offline have talked about. I personally go through the struggles of finding a way to protest, and a lot of friends of mine who are public figures and are afraid to be out there, and because if you don't say the right thing, you don't stand the right way, you photograph the wrong way, somebody's taking a selfie with you, all of a sudden you're taking advantage of the situation for fame. And I struggle with that for the last 3 weeks, how to protest and what does it mean to protest. And you're an expert at this, so I love to jump into that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, what I advise folks getting into movement work for the first time is you never show up to someone's dinner party or house empty-handed, right? And just like with getting involved in activism, you always show up with an offering to the community most marginalized. And sometimes those offerings is like, what I do is like on the ground safety, holistic safety support, making sure people are safe from the cops, also safe from like the weather, heat, all of those kind of like situations. But everyone has a place in the movement, you know. One thing that I really appreciate about you is that you have uplifted, you know, our people and people of color within the entertainment industry, and that by no means is easy. Like I couldn't even imagine the just like the strength and wherewithal to be able to navigate through that, because like as we know, we live in a settler colonial state that really is grounded in white supremacy. So how do we continue to uplift one another and those most marginalized? So, you know, always show up with some kind of offering. And you don't need to be out in the streets. You can be behind your computer. You can be around a dinner table addressing anti-Blackness with your family, with your loved ones, and always being there in service to Black lives and liberation.
And I feel like the best analogy I can give is that we are living in a pressure cooker environment, and we have yet to even release that pressure. It's still building. And you know, when we look outside, and I live 2 blocks away from Santa Monica and La Cienega, where the protest always ends, right in front of my house. I can hear my windows move practically as they go by. And I had to find a place for me to go out there. So one day I'm like, all right, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to protest. I'm going to be among the community, and I have to do it. But when I got out there, what I saw, it was so confusing for me, for personally. What I saw was so much of the policemen and the firemen that I actually know, because over the last 6 weeks, I've been dropping off masks that we've been raised on the show to give to the firemen and the policemen. I know these sheriffs, they're standing there with all these gears on with their guns in their hand, of course, because I guess that's what they feel like they need to do. And I know them, and I know them personally, and I know that they're not there to want to at least create violence. But I can see the protesters push and aggravate and try, just in their face, screaming in their face, and I couldn't stand. I could not stand there and watch. I wanted to say something, but I'm like, I can't do that either, because if I say something on behalf of these people I actually know that I've been supporting and helping for the community, then you know, the consequences is something that I don't think I can bear. But on the other hand, I could not stand on the other side of the protest and scream with them and yelling at the cops, because the justice that we're looking for it should not be through violence, right? So as a photographer, I was there trying to capture moments. And when I went back and look at these pictures, and I honestly have to tell you, I posted 2 pictures. And everything else I threw away because they're not true. They're just not authentically true what I think it should be. And I'm not sure that's happening everywhere. I can only say what's happening outside my window. And that was my struggle. And that's when I found that, okay, being out there is not what I can do, because I have too much judgment on my own. I have too much of preconceived notion what it should be or it shouldn't be. So I've been trying to find ways to support the community, and being here is my way. And I think all of us are trying to find our ways in this pressure cooker, right? Because the pressure cooker is boiling, it's going crazy, it's tossing. We yet haven't released the pressure. And that's something that I'm going through every single day still. Whether it's speaking to another fellow Asian American, trying to understand how you are able to stand there in solidarity when there are also injustice that's perpetrated on the Asian community every single day. When we wear a mask, the other races are throwing stones at us. Our president himself is calling us the Kung flu. So it's a struggle. And to me, when I watch what you're doing, it's amazing because you're able to separate all that off your personal belief to your core of your belief and be out there and protest for the greater good. And I'm trying to get there.
Yeah, it's a process, right? It's a process. And like part of it is really unveiling that white supremacy harms all of us. And I remember at the beginning, back in mid-January, when people started saying things like the China virus, or they even used Kung flu early on. It was Black activists that were addressing that. It was Black activists on Twitter that were saying, why is the Wall Street Journal taking pictures of Asian people just hanging out, wearing masks and putting it on the front of these articles about COVID? So for me, is like I've seen over and over again that we have such a beautiful community of people that care about one another, from Black organizers to Indigenous organizers to Asian Pacific Islander organizers to Latinx to, everyone in between. And one thing I've been seeing over and over again at all the protests I've been, I just came back from one 30 minutes ago, is that there is a deep sense of community care and solidarity. And solidarity is power with, not power over. Solidarity is about getting to build strength across communities. So that way we can see the change that we want to see in the world. And Dr. Angela Davis said that this moment right now is a moment of possibility, a moment where we are recreating and reimagining. And I don't know about how things were in LA, but when our lockdowns happened here, mutual aid groups started sprouting out everywhere. And we started taking care of each other because we knew that this negligent, genocidal, racist government didn't care about us. So we were, folks were sharing PPE, folks were doing pickups for elders that couldn't go to the hospital to pick up their medication. And we're seeing that same thing right now at protests. I'm seeing a lot of amazing white accomplices and non-Black people of color doing what we can from the back to support Black organizers. That means everything from providing, street med to collecting garbage and recyclables, If we want to do more than just protest, we need to think about what is the world that we're fighting for? What is the world that we're building together? And in that, I think there's just so much hope and beauty. And I see it every single time I'm out there.
Well, for my personal turning point was when I was scrolling through Instagram like everybody else, and I stopped at this poster that you had posted. And first it was Asian for Black Lives. And I was like, that's a new perspective. Then it was Filipino for Black Lives, Vietnamese for Black Lives. And the series of posters that Pierre created, it was so poignant to me. What I understood, what I got out of it was that, no, it wasn't a singular Asian for Black Lives. It's the Asian community, that which includes Filipinos, Chinese, Taiwanese. And in our culture growing up, we haven't yet loved all our own Asian races. And within our race itself, we're self-deprecating. We be ourselves, but we're the silent race, and we allow whatever happens, and we just work hard because our parents says, stay invisible, work hard. That's how you show you're resilient. Get your SAT score higher than a white person next to you, and that shows achievement, right? That's our generation, how I grew up. Gen Zs and whatever the gens after us may perhaps be different, but that was my my upbringing. But when I saw those series of posters, when I actually was able to say to myself, oh, I gotta work on my Asian proudness and understand what had perpetrated on me and what have the Black community actually helped and supported and enabled for the Asian to amplify their message. And when those two collide, came together, and when I got to speak to you offline, then I understood. So I have to thank you for that, because everybody goes through this in a different way. And that singular poster, the singular series of messaging, and for those of you guys are watching out there, you can go to the Instagram and please share those images, because they're incredibly powerful to me. And I think that's what's so important, because we're lost. A lot of us are lost. These conversations I have here, every day, I'm taking away with different lessons. I have Asian Americans here. I have black chefs here. I have Black actors on here and actresses, and they all come from such a different place of pain. Yeah. And we're all trying to find that healing. And through this, I had to relearn what I had perpetrated on others along the way of my own journey and reevaluate, because our business in fashion and photography, entertainment, it's being evaluated every day right now. How many Black faces people have painted and out of context that looks a certain way is deemed racist now. How many films are we reevaluating, and how many things that we have said in just, as we want to say, is a joke, and everybody laughed in the room, that seemed to make it okay. And now we are redefining the definition of racism all over again. And I think that's for the first time in my life that I really understood what racism means and what that does to people, whether it's a joke or it's a statement. And that's a really long journey personally for me to go through, because I never realized that, and to even have to look in the mirror and go, oh, you're Asian, and what did you do in that community, and what have you done along the way to other communities?
Yeah, it's a process, right? And we're human beings, we're constantly learning. And what we're seeing now is like a level of accountability. But what I want for folks to do, especially within our own community, is to call in one another, is to actually invite that conversation, because no one is born woke, right? No one is born with a critical analysis around race. Just like everything else, we have to learn and unlearn. So with folks that have, I'm sure I have caused harm. I'm sure I have offended folks. What I have found in the past is people have called me in, people who care about me, and have like checked my, me upholding white supremacy, or being ableist, or, being sexist. So I think a lot of the work is about us calling in one another and really holding space for each other to be able to grow, rather than stopping that growth by shaming. Shaming doesn't help anyone. Shame is a useless emotion. We need to feel agency, but also we need to feel the space to be able to grow in a way that is authentic to us. And thank you so much for what you said about the poster. Like, I'm an organizer, I'm not an artist. It was something I created on Canva last year on Eric Garner's the fifth anniversary of his murder. And I wanted our community, to see ourselves invested in this. When I was in Ferguson in 2014, Patrice Kahn-Cullors, one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, called all of us non-Black people of color to go back into our communities and find a way of engaging us, our folks. And this was my way. And I wanted every single, from Filipinx to Khmer to Tibetans to Ilmin to everyone in between. I wanted us to see ourselves responsible for supporting and defending Black lives and liberation. I think that's why it's not to me, it's like a mirror. It shows that we care about justice. It shows that even though many times we have been silenced, we will no longer be silent, because we are a powerful people if we can unite, and especially if we can unite for Black lives and liberation.
The poster behind you, I can see a the glimmer of it right behind you. So one of the things that I can say from just scrolling through and reading your Instagrams and all the posts that you have out there, and I'm one that embraces social media because it is a place of sharing of education. You just have to comb through what's the true news. But one of the things I've learned the most through this is that I always call myself over the years that I'm colorblind as a photographer, that I don't see color when I photograph. I treat everybody the same. I just want to capture the inner beauty. It's really easy to have these sound bites, right? I'm empowering women. I'm shooting them like they're the most beautiful way. But somebody reminded me just this week, being colorblind doesn't make you not racist. Mm-hmm. Actually, being colorblind is the opposite of what you should do as a photographer. You actually should recognize the color that's in front of you and amplify that color and celebrate that color. And it's such an interesting paradigm because I celebrated the fact that I don't judge whoever you are, whatever color you are, you're in front of me. But that's not enough in the social climate we are in today. In fact, it is so important now to recognize that I have a talent I'm shooting next week that's Indian, African mix. And no, I need to be responsible as a photographer, capturing her in that way rather than, I'm shooting her and making her most beautiful, making her, it doesn't matter her age, it doesn't matter her size, I'm inclusion. It's such a crazy lesson, and it changes the way I begin to see my work, when I reevaluate my work, when I look at casting in the future, that yes, just saying that, I have Asian people, I shoot Asian people all the time, I shoot Black people all the time. That's not enough. And I think if my work in a way that I can influence the model agents, the PR agencies, to begin to understand that what casting means, it means putting communication out there of color recognition, that is my protest. That's the beginning of my protest. And I know a lot of the PR people are not going to work with me because I am going to call them out on that. I know that I'm going to step on a lot of toes because of the push that I want to have. But I also know by watching what you're doing and what watching protest leaders are doing, able to put themselves second and make the cause first for the greater good, it's worth it. And I'm on that journey with you, and I thank you for allowing me to be on a journey with you. It is a hard, damn lesson to learn. It truly has been.
It really is. And like, I think just like how it's important for us to practice compassion for ourselves in learning, right? And one, I think it's important for folks to self-educate. And it sounds like you're being educated by people that love you and that care about you. There's a resource that a really good friend of mine, Charnir Kari, created called checkyourself.info. And it's basically a starting point for how people can get into this movement by first educating themselves about what is privilege? What does that mean? What is anti-Blackness? Why do we do land acknowledgements or indigenous land acknowledgements? So like all of those things. And I think the more we can make this information accessible, the more people will feel empowered to be able to show up just like how you are. You are shifting culture, and that's such a powerful thing. I'm just like out there at a protest, and like what you do will reflect back on people that are watching. You're the type of person that I have always wanted to see growing up, that is in an industry that is really leading with your art, to be able to shift people's perceptions. And I hope other folks that are watching this see you as an example of what their activism can look like, because it's really powerful, it's really beautiful, and it is effective. So yeah, you said that you're not, you don't feel comfortable out in the streets. That's fine. Let me take that on for you. But you're doing what I can never do, and your reach it's immense. So no, thank you for all of your work.
And we also just celebrated LGBTQ month, and I want to talk about that because for a lot of the Asian communities, I don't have a coming out story. Everybody else always asks me, so what was it like when you came out? And I go, I think when I came out, my parents just go, oh, he's screwed up. he's a second child, and he's gonna be weird, and I was weird all my life. And only story I have is I went through a period of my life that I was just completely asexual until I was like 28 maybe, and I'm like, oh, I hit puberty so late. cool. Like I didn't know what sexuality was until I was really late because I didn't hit puberty like 25. I'm like, oh, my voice is gonna change now finally. But I will. What was it like for you as an Asian American, Filipino American coming out? Did you have a coming out story?
Yeah, coming out for what I know for a lot of people of color is an ongoing process. You know, you come out to your friends, you come out to yourself, or you come out to. I've always known that I'm queer, but I came out to my parents when I was 30, and it was because I was going to Beijing and I was dating someone at the time, and I wanted to know them to know, like, in case I got executed in Beijing, if this really handsome uh, uh, Korean Japanese guy shows up, that's my boyfriend. My dad, who's he very stoic Filipino father, was like, finally you came out,
Ah,
super supportive. My sister started crying. My mom, on the other hand, took it much harder because she's always wanted me to find a wife, have kids, that whole thing. But I think we it's important for folks to be gentle with themselves in their coming out process, and we shouldn't have to always feel like we need to do that. We just need to feel like we're authentic to ourselves because we owe no one else. No one should be entitled to our identity. That's
well,
for us.
it's. I just think it's funny that a lot of parents or friends know, but it's almost like their best kept secret. They don't want to tell you they know. But I never had that moment like, oh, I'm so scared. Somebody's gonna find out, and then I have that, and it's so incredible now to see the new generations of LGBTQ community that they celebrate with no fear, and that's what our generation have always strived for and paved the road for that, and a generation above us have dealt with the HIV pandemic and going through that and also paved the road for us. It's so incredible to watch because it's emblematic what's happening now with Black Lives Matters. It is an evolutionary process that we're all going through, and we knew the HIV really brought the community together like none other, and now it's even more celebrated when I get to see the trans community, Black trans community coming together. When I saw your protest last week that you went out, you're like, I can't do live, I can't do my interview until I go on this protest for the Black trans community. And that was so powerful because for the first time, you got to see that we're celebrating together for one cause, and we happen to have all different causes of our own, but combine them all together, it creates a greater noise and a bigger voice.
Yeah, it's so much. This last Pride has been one of the most powerful prides for me. Um, Being part of the Black Trans Lives Action in Brooklyn, 15,000 people, and being able to be there to support through keeping people safe and to make sure that our Black trans siblings and leaders were protected and were held and were uplifted. It was, yeah, it was absolutely transformative, and it showed me what is possible in this new world, because that's what's happening is we're leaving the shell of the old world and we're creating a new world together.
Well, for you, as you're out there doing these activist protest work, when do you begin to see change? When do we begin to see what we're doing and there's change, or the effort that we're putting in that it's going to evolve?
Yeah, so there's like legislative wins, right? There's specific kind of goals, but also there is like cultural shift. There is consciousness building. When a new person comes into a protest, I do my best to try to make sure that they feel welcome, that they kind of like know what's going on, because this person can help shift and change other people's minds. The whole reason that I created the graphic, the Asians for Black Lives graphic, is to have people feel welcomed into the space. Because when we have people power, that's when things change. If we look at every single win in the last, century, whether it's like the People Power Revolution in the Philippines, to the 504 sit-in in San Francisco, led by disability justice activists, to what we're seeing right now by Black organizers, to Standing Rock, it's because people care deeply about the work and about the world and each other. And that's what's shifting, and that's how we're changing the world.
Well, we begin to see the meters move, and we begin to see the police that are being arrested. We still have a long way to go, right? And for Breonna Taylor, we still haven't had justice for her. And that's what I have gotten to a place that is so hard to actually start scrolling through the news or watching the Instagram news. And it's tough because I'm not a politician in any way, and nor I'm not in a legislative protest in any way. And you sometimes feel so powerless, and all you can do is just keep reposting these messages. And I love what you just said is that it's consciousness. I think collective consciousness does have so much power. And so for those of you guys out there, if you're not out there like me protesting, that single post to make awareness for your 100 followers to 1 million followers, it really does matter. If you can, and I hope the same notion that we have and what you have about protesting and collectiveness will encourage all of us to vote the same way, because truly that and I said this over and over on the show, when you look at the red states, the minorities are the ones that did not show up to vote last time. The Asian Americans and the Latino communities are the ones that's lacking in the and only way to make changes in those 17 states. It's only 17 states that we're really voting for. And that's how it is with Electoral College. And in those 17 states, we can move half of that, and we can probably we hope to put somebody who is kinder, more equality driven into the office. It changes from that one vote, and I really encourage people to do that. And I hope the organizer like you and the protester will put the same effort to help to educate people to go out there, because that day when we get to vote in November, it should be as powerful as all the marches that's been going on.
Definitely. And also, I encourage folks to really look at their local government. I'm very lucky to have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as my congressperson. And it's because of the grassroots power that she was able to build within our communities, that she's now currently in a position where she's constantly speaking truth to power. So folks that are watching right now, you also have power to be able to shift what happens in your local community along with what's happening on a national level, because we need to think about it in a multi-pronged strategy. Yes, we do need to get rid of the current occupant of the White House, but also we need to make sure that people have access to housing, people have access to health care, that our communities are able to defund the police and put the funds into community-led efforts that really actually is about protecting us. So there's so many ways that we can really show up, not just in November, but also moving into the next however many years, because what COVID has shown us is that the world has changed, and we can continue to be part of that change for the good.
For the better. And this month is Minority Mental Health Month. So I have to ask, with all the protests and all the noises around you, what do you do to stay grounded and be able to wake up every day and start all over again?
I stay off of social media as much as possible. I mean, I have to do it because of organizing, but a lot of times doom scrolling and getting constant, like unsolicited critiques, it's not really good for one's mental health. I try my best to be in community with folks, whether it's like virtually like this or like at protests. Protests actually fuel me because I see people I love, care about, and respect in the same space fighting for that. But also just being gentle with myself and like watching Avatar: Last Airbender, and like having, a couple glasses of tea. Whatever you need to do to be gentle with yourself, especially now, I think that's what folks need to practice, because if we don't care for ourselves, we're not going to be able to continue the work. So we need to love and care for ourselves and each other more fiercely, more intentionally, and more deeply than the settler colonial state hates us, because we only have each other.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that, because that was a beautiful way to end our conversation, because I couldn't be more proud and for an Asian brother out there doing the work that I personally not capable to be able to handle. But at the same time, celebrating LGBTQ community, and you just have all the amazing check boxes, click off on my list of what a good human being should be. Because at the end of the day, it's truly about the core of who we are, and we fight in different ways. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn how to protest in my own way. And for others who are listening, that you'll find your path and your learning. And that's all we can do at this time. And soon that pressure cooker will pop. It will go. And that's November. And that's when we all need to stand up again and again in solidarity to make change. Thank you again so much for being with me. And please stay safe out there.
Thank you so much, Yu Tsai. And please care for yourself and continue to do the amazing work that you're doing. It really is shifting the narrative.
And truly, my platform is your platform. Anytime you need to take over my entire platform, that you want to talk about anything, you just give me that lovely little DM and it is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.